Syracuse lost to Pitt on Saturday night, and you guys had a lot to say about it. So let's get right to it.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, and of course, we're always free and available wherever you get your podcasts, whether you're watching right now on YouTube or you're listening to Locked On Syracuse on your favorite audio platform. On today's show, we get to your comments, your takes following Syracuse's 30-13 loss to the Pitt Panthers on Saturday night. And before we get to your comments, we got to talk about how Fran Brown, in his Monday press conference, made it pretty clear that he is sticking with Rickie Collins. All that and more coming up here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. And before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. So I can already imagine what many of you are probably thinking after Fran Brown, in his Monday press conference, said that Rickie Collins is the starting quarterback and that he is going to start against Georgia Tech. Now, this is something I am going to defend Fran Brown on. Whoa. Jackson, how can you possibly be defending Fran Brown here? How? I myself have even acknowledged that Rickie Collins is not good. The reality is, as I've been saying for a long time, I really don't think there's a right answer here. This coaching staff, let's rewind, okay? They got Rickie Collins in December from the transfer portal. They watched him for months, and no matter what they say publicly, what happened was they watched Rickie Collins for months. They knew he was not a starting quarterback. They knew that. They recognized it. They recognized their mistake. And good on them for it, because in the spring portal, they go out and they get themselves a damn good quarterback in Steve Angeli from Notre Dame. But Steve Angeli gets hurt, so they have to go to Rickie Collins because he's the backup quarterback. And I understand he is playing really poorly. But Fran Brown, I'll paraphrase here, is basically saying that Luke Carney, the backup, a true freshman, he's not ready. He's not ready to play. And so if Luke Carney is not ready to play, well, you want to go behind him. That's Jakari Williams, a redshirt freshman. If he's third string on the depth chart right now behind Rickie Collins and a guy who's not ready in Luke Carney, where do you think Jakari Williams is at in development as far as can he play a game? That's all I'm saying. And you can throw out, hey, what about Dan Villari Wildcat like Syracuse did a couple of years ago? Actually, that's how they beat Pitt a couple of years ago. Sure, but then you eliminate any semblance of a passing game if you decide to do that, which maybe they do at some point. And I find it curious and I find it weird that Fran Brown is saying that Luke Carney isn't really ready to play, even though he went to him in the second half for a few series to try to find a spark and then pulled him after not really giving him much of a chance to do anything. It's all weird, but just know that I don't really think there's really a right answer here. I really don't. So they want to stick with Rickie Collins. Fine. 2025 is likely a wash at this point anyway. Having said that, let's get to your comments here. And the first one is coming from Glenn. Glenn tunes into a lot of Locked On Syracuse podcasts, and he's a frequent commenter of the show. So let's get to Glenn right here. Let's not drive Fran Brown out of town over green coaching. I don't know exactly what he means by that, but I assume it might be a typo. Let's just say over coaching. How about that? Sometimes you have to lose a bad game as a learning experience, but this loss sucked because we basically lost a bowl game unless Rickie finds his groove, which is doubtful. Glenn, thank you so much for the comment. And yeah, I did address in the post-game show yesterday how it's very unlikely this team at this point makes a bowl. For all intents and purposes, the season is over because they would have to beat one of Georgia Tech on Saturday, which they're more than 2 touchdown underdogs in, or Notre Dame on the road, or Miami on the road. They have to win one of those games in order to make a bowl. That does not seem very likely. And even then, I wouldn't say that North Carolina and Boston College are gimmies with the way Syracuse's quarterback situation is right now. But Glenn, here's why I'm really glad that you commented this, because I want to be very, very clear here. I want to be 100% clear, because I know that on yesterday's show, I hammered Fran Brown quite a bit. I gave him a lot of criticism. I am in no way, shape, or form advocating that Syracuse moves on from Fran Brown. All right? Can we just get that on the record here, ladies and gentlemen? Jackson Holzer of Locked On Syracuse is not dumb enough to think that Syracuse should consider moving on from Fran Brown. Okay? Just get it out there. Fran Brown has this team headed in the right direction. 2026, you're likely going to have Steve Angeli back, assuming he can recover from his injury, of course. He's got to recover from that torn Achilles. Very important. Timeline can be very tricky with that injury, and performance can be very tricky with that injury. But if he can recover, he's healthy. You have Jonte. Hopefully you can get back Jonte Cook, but regardless, you got your quarterback back in Steve Angeli. You could have a very good 2026 and also 2027. And you have a top 30 national recruiting class coming in for the class of 2026. And I believe that 2027 might be even better than the class of 2026. So I understand all the long-term ramifications of Fran Brown and how he has this team headed in the right direction. And he had this team headed in the right direction in 2025 had Steve Angeli not gotten hurt. But having said that, he's the head coach of Syracuse football. He is bound to get criticized. And just because Jackson Holzer of Locked On Syracuse is criticizing Fran Brown doesn't mean that Jackson Holzer of Locked On Syracuse wants the Orange to move on from Fran Brown. All right, let's just get that on the record here. Next comment from Andrew Porter. Thank you so much for the comment, Andrew. This loss made me question Fran Brown at the point for the first time. It's clear this was a team loss. They shot them in the foot multiple times in what was a winnable game, but Rickie isn't it. Staying with him is bad coaching by Brown at this point. Well, Andrew, by team, I'm curious to know what you mean exactly by team loss, because I thought the defense was really good. And I gave him an A in the postgame show. I really don't think they deserve any blame for Syracuse's loss to the Pitt Panthers. I know it says they allowed 30 points. They didn't actually allow 30 points. 7 of those came on special teams. 7 of those points came in garbage time. So when you say a team loss, I wouldn't really include the defense, even though, yeah, everyone plays for Syracuse. And if the team loses, everyone loses. But the defense was good. Regarding Fran Brown, the in-game management at the end of the first half was inexcusable. And the way he handled the quarterback situation in the second half was mind-boggling. I don't really understand putting in Luke Carney for a spark, not giving him much of a chance because you don't think he's ready, and then putting back in Rickie Collins when you have already shown the world that you do not believe in him and you do not trust him. And no, I do not care what he says to the media about how he still believes in Rickie. You know he doesn't actually believe in Rickie. He has demonstrated with his actions time in and time again. But as far as how the quarterback situation is actually playing out, it's what I said in the first 4 minutes of the show where, look, he got Steve Angeli in the portal for a reason. And I'm very curious to know, Andrew, and I'm not saying this in a demeaning way. I'm asking you genuinely, if you're watching or listening to this right now, what would you want Syracuse to do at quarterback right now? What do you want them to do? I'm all for suggestions. I just don't really know at this point if there is a right answer. But Andrew, thank you so much for the comment. Once again, Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, Fan Reaction Podcast. We'll continue to reacting to your takes following Syracuse's loss to the Pitt Panthers on Saturday night after this. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you definitely don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. This is FanDuel's way of saying, hey, just bet $5 on the team that's playing against the New York Jets, and we're going to give you $300 in bonus bets to use. I think that's a pretty nice way to look at it, all right? So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. One of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners is TWO, formerly Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's quo.com/lockedoncollege. You can even keep your existing number for free. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Jackson Holzer, Locked On Syracuse. Let's continue reacting to your takes following Syracuse's loss to the Pitt Panthers on Saturday night by a final score of 30-13. And this comment is very interesting that we're about to get to. Shall we? I'm going to put it up on the screen right now, but don't worry if you're listening. I'll read it for you. Coach needs to recruit some depth, clearly not developing QB2 and QB3. All right, excellent point here, because I do think that Syracuse in the offseason, they can learn from this, which is, hey, the backup quarterback is incredibly important, because the odds that your starting quarterback is going to be able to play every single game from start to finish is pretty unlikely. This is the sport of football. You need to have a good backup quarterback. Problem is that it's very difficult to get a good backup quarterback, especially in this new era of college sports, which I think we're all still adjusting to. The NIL era is relatively new. It's only been around for a few years. Transfer portal chaos has only been around for a few years. It's new to everyone. One of the good things about the portal, though, is that it does allow players to go out and find opportunities. In the past, if you went to a school, you were stuck. You might be QB2 for your entire career. It could imagine Steve Angeli, for example, at Notre Dame. Would he really have ever gotten a chance to start? Even though we know he's really good, but he might not have ever really played at Notre Dame in the old system. Teams could hog their talent more. Nowadays, in the portal, if someone is a backup and they don't want to be a backup anymore, whether or not they should be a backup or not, they can go out in the portal and find a team that might be willing to give them more of an opportunity. Or maybe it's more money, or it's both. And I say that because quarterbacks want to play, and only one can be on the field. The reason why Syracuse was in the situation that they were in is because they got Rickie Collins in December. They got him in December, okay? And then they got Steve Angeli in March. There was a possibility that Rickie Collins after that could have just transferred out, but at that point, why would he? Probably got himself a nice NIL deal as well, because he was going to be the starting quarterback of Syracuse, right? So it's just really hard to get yourself a good backup quarterback. The best way to do it is you got to develop from within. Develop the quarterback from within. Make sure you pay the backup quarterback a lot of money so that that backup quarterback is willing to sit and wait, perhaps for a few years, and then give him the shot when the starter moves on. And you have that constant chain cycle, so to speak. I'm losing my train of thought, but you get the point. So, yes, to this person that left the comment, you're absolutely right. I would love for Syracuse to take a much harder look at their backup quarterback situation for next year and in years going forward. But it's not as easy. Teams can't hog all their talent anymore. Players want to get opportunities to start. They want money. So when your starting quarterback goes down and you're a program like Syracuse, not exactly easy to have a quarterback where it's a next man up mentality. Okay? But you do make a good point. And regarding Luke Carney, I do hope that Syracuse is able to keep him and develop him and groom him to maybe one day be the starting quarterback of Syracuse football. But let's move on to the next comment here. This is from Ryan. All right, this is from Ryan. Fran must dig deep and figure out how to get through the last 5 games without things getting ugly internally. Frustration from the fan base is clear, but frustration from players is starting to show more on the field. Him and his staff need to be better and commit to a plan at quarterback. Well, Ryan, good news. The plan is to stay with Rickie Collins. Whether or not we like it, whether or not we don't like it, that's the plan for Fran Brown. That is, quote unquote, the best answer. I don't know if that's really the best answer, but sure. Fine, I guess. But they do have a plan at quarterback. And I am frustrated. I mean, I am a Syracuse fan, Syracuse alum, and I'm sure many of us are very frustrated. My frustration is more directed at the circumstance that Syracuse finds itself in. It's not necessarily the performance. This team was looking good. They were going to be good this year. They look like a team that could compete in the ACC. They look like a team that at minimum was going to make a bowl in 2025. Steve Angeli got hurt. That is the defining the defining moment of the season. Steve Angeli getting hurt. That's why I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated he got hurt. And I'm sure many of you feel the same way. Because the backup is not as good as Steve Angeli. He's not even close to Steve Angeli. And as far as the players maybe showing frustration, the coaches showing frustration, at the end of the day, I'd rather them show frustration than be lifeless and not care. Because frustration is emotion. And sometimes emotion can be good. Now, you have to channel that frustration and not let it spiral. But I'm glad that they still care. I'm glad that they're still fighting and they're trying to make this work. But it's an impossible situation that they seem to be in right now. So as far as, Fran Brown's going to let this spiral out of control, I think he's a strong enough head coach to where he's not going to let it happen. He's not going to let this 2025 season and the ending of it, which we know at this point is probably not going to be very good, spiral into future years. Okay, I hope this is not a Florida State situation where Florida State, they missed the college football playoff. They got robbed from it. And then they have a terrible 2024. And then they come back this year and they still can't win a conference game. It's unbelievable how that team beat Alabama and they can't win a conference game. Insanity. I don't think Fran Brown is going to let that happen with Syracuse. I think we're all pretty well aware of what happened this season. Steve Angeli got hurt. That's the defining moment. Yes, everyone's frustrated about it, including the players and the coaching staff. But 2026 is a brand new year, and you're going to have your quarterback hopefully back. But Ryan, thank you so much for the comment. And you are right that Fran Brown does need to make sure that his players are still caring and they're not giving up on the season, even though as a fan base, we pretty much have come to the acceptance phase of, they're probably not making a bowl. in 2025. We'll get to another comment right here. This person also didn't leave their name, but that's okay. People faulting the quarterback situation, but honestly, where are the questions about the offensive line blocking for quarterback and the running game? They cannot even get the run game going. You make a good point about the run game and specifically about the blocking in general. We have not touched on it a lot here on Locked On Syracuse. It's mainly been about Rickie Collins. Yasin Willis the past 2 games. He's the running back of Syracuse, the starter. 28 carries for 57 yards, which is just 2.03 yards or carry. That's what he has done combined the last 2 games. And I'm not necessarily blaming Yasin Willis for those stats, which, let's face it, are unacceptable. That is beyond bad. Bad is like 3 yards a carry. This is barely over 2 yards a carry. I understand that Pitt and SMU are both in the top 3 in the ACC in run defense. Pitt has the number 1 run defense in the ACC, one of the best in the entire country. I get it. That type of production from the run game is still inexcusable. The offensive line for Syracuse, you are 1,000% right. They have to be a whole lot better. Quite frankly, they're not good enough, a lot of them. They're not. I understand that the competition will quote unquote get easier because you're not going to face top 3 run defenses in the ACC a lot moving forward. But it's not good. It's bad, the run blocking, and I don't really care what Pro Football Focus says. They gave him bad grades, but Pro Football Focus, I said it last week, my relationship with them, done after giving good grades to Rickie Collins the first 2 weeks. But I don't think all of it is really on the offensive line. I think all of this is connected and all relates to the quarterback situation right now of Syracuse, which is why I haven't really been talking about it a lot. Because Syracuse does not have much of a threat in the passing game. They have good weapons, but they don't have someone who can get it to those weapons. And so when you're in that situation and a defense knows that you can't really pass, well, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to sell out and try to stop the run. And the last couple of weeks, that is exactly what has happened with Syracuse. So, yeah, part of it's on the offensive line, but I think a lot of it is also on Syracuse's quarterback situation. Defenses know. They know that Rickie Collins can't throw. They know that he's not going to beat him. So all they're trying to do is stop the run. Because if you can stop the run of Syracuse, you win. As we have seen the last couple of weeks. So that's a long-winded way of me saying it's all tied together and it all goes back to the man under center in Rickie Collins. Feel free to comment more of your thoughts in the comments section below. We still got a couple of more comments to react to here on today's Fan Reaction Podcast. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth between 401ks, savings, and investments. It's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why I started using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where my money's going and how to make it work harder for me. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Locked On Syracuse, I'm Jackson Holzer. Let's continue reacting to your takes following Syracuse's loss to the Pitt Panthers. This comment, once again, didn't come from someone who left their name, but that's okay. Let's get to it. We may not have hope, but at least we have Jackson. That is right. Whether you like it, whether you love it, whether you hate it, Jackson Holzer, which is me, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to continue doing these podcasts. It's my job to watch and react to every Syracuse game, whether they're really good, as we saw last year with Syracuse football, or whether they're really bad. We're going to talk about it here on Locked On Syracuse. So thank you so much for the support, not going anywhere. Truly means a ton. And hey, you know what? Last year, if you were with us during basketball season, we got through that all together. We can get through this. We can get through this ending of the football season. We got this, ladies and gentlemen. We're all in this together. And just think about the future of Syracuse football and not necessarily 2025. Please, 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 please think about where this program is headed. Just not this season. All right? But thank you so much for the compliment. Thank you so much for the support. Let's get to one final comment, one final reaction here. This is a really good one from Steve. Syracuse has demonstrated the ability to come back from a deficit, so the 17-7 score at the half wasn't insurmountable. In the third quarter, Syracuse had decent field position and was moving the ball. Then a third interception. The Pitt defender was all over Daryl Gill, holding and restricting one arm completely. The pass was well thrown. Defensive interference was the only reason for the incompletion. This penalty should have been called. Syracuse would have kept the ball moved down the field, possibly scoring and making it a close game again. And Pitt would not have added another 3 points on a field goal, making their lead seem almost insurmountable. Steve, thank you so much for that comment. Very well detailed, very well thought out comment, I might add. Syracuse, to their credit, in the Fran Brown era, they have demonstrated an ability to come back in games. We saw it against Miami at the end of last year. They were down 21-0. We saw it against Virginia Tech last year. They were down in that one. I think it was 18 points in the third quarter, if memory serves correct. That was a pretty big comeback. We even saw this year Syracuse come back in the fourth quarter in the final 5 minutes against UConn. And I remember thinking in that moment, oh my goodness, that was a much needed comeback, because at the time, we didn't know whether or not Steve Angeli was going to be able to turn it around. It didn't look like he was going to be having a good year, and that Syracuse looked like it was in real trouble. But they found a way to come back and beat UConn, and I felt like that moment kind of jump-started the team, because then they blow out Colgate like they should, but then they would go on the road and they just dominate Clemson. So Syracuse, yes, they have demonstrated an ability to come back in games, but notice how they came back in games with Kyle McCord at quarterback and Steve Angeli at quarterback. They have not shown that they can come back in games with Rickie Collins as the quarterback. All right? They can barely even string together a few positive plays in a row with Rickie Collins. So that's why I said on the post-game show, and that was my honest thought at the end of the first half after the debacle. The game was over at 17-7, because I didn't see a world in which Syracuse would get 17 points. They just didn't. As far as the play that you're referring to, the third interception by Rickie Collins, I can't argue with you on it. Honestly, I gave Rickie Collins a break for that one. I thought it was a pretty well thrown ball. I thought Daryl Gill could have come up with it, but he was interfered with, and so he couldn't come up with it, and it ended up being intercepted. And the officials probably should have thrown a flag. It probably should have been pass interference. But is that really the reason why Syracuse lost? Is it? Yeah, there was a missed call. There's always going to be missed calls. And this is a hill that I will die on. I am not changing this take. I am never going to blame the refs. Ever. I'm never going to do it. There might come a time where 99% of you are just going to be hating on the officials after they make some game-changing call in a Syracuse game. That could happen. It hasn't really happened yet since I have been the host of Locked On Syracuse. But I already know, and I'm warning you what I'm going to say, which is, let's talk about the things that Syracuse can control rather than an official making a bad call. Yeah, officials make bad calls. It happens. Fight through it. I actually mentioned this on the ACC Squad Show a few weeks ago, where Georgia Tech, they flat out should have lost to Wake Forest. Like, they should have. I know that they're ranked top 10 in the country right now. That's part of the reason why I don't think that they're really a top 10 team, even though they're going to slaughter Syracuse on Saturday. I don't think they're really all that good. But against Wake Forest. They lost the game, but the officials did not make the right call. They did not see that a guy was clearly lined up in the neutral zone. And as a result, Georgia Tech got the ball back. They tied the game. It goes to overtime, and Wake Forest ended up losing that game. And you could sit there and say, hey, if the officials just do their job there, Wake Forest wins. And you're right. Wake Forest would have won the game had the official done their job properly and called a neutral zone infraction. 100% right. But is that really the reason why Wake Forest lost? No. They still could have gotten a stop on defense to win the game. And when they went to overtime, they could have won the game in overtime, but they didn't. And so, yeah, you can use the ref as a scapegoat, sure. And in this case, yeah, it probably should have been pass interference. Sorry. Officials are going to make bad calls. Control what you can control. All right. Thank you all so much for the participation this week. Thank you all so much for your comments. If I did not get to your comment, and there were a lot of comments, I do apologize. Hopefully next week when we do another fan reaction podcast, I can get to your comment. Now, as far as what's coming up on this podcast in the near future, tomorrow we are going to talk about Syracuse against Georgia Tech on Saturday. That should be fun. And then on Wednesday, we'll do some Syracuse basketball. Full episode dedicated to Syracuse basketball, analyzing the starting lineup. So all that and more coming up on this show in the near future. And folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse, and I'll see you all again soon.